Hello, everybody. We're very excited to have you today for our EV 101 webinar. My name is Olivia Burns. I'm an environmental specialist with Clark County's Office of Sustainability. This EV 101 session will give you a clear, up-to-date look at electric vehicles, from environmental benefits and financial incentives to the charging basics and maintenance. This presentation is also part of National Drive Electric Month, which runs from September 12th to October 12th this year, celebrating and promoting the benefits of electric vehicles across the country. Today's presenter is Paul Bordenkircher, President of the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association. Before I hand things over to Paul to talk all things EVs, I'll quickly share a few tips to enhance your presentation experience. First, you can translate the entire meeting page and/or the live audio into another language by clicking the translate button and selecting your preferred language from the drop-down menu. Closed captions are also available for this presentation. Click the CC button at the bottom right corner of the screen to turn them on. To interact with us during the session, feel free to use the chat box next to the live stream to submit any comments or questions. If a question comes up in mind during the presentation, please drop it in the chat and we will address them at the end. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel after the session. Lastly, if you experience any issues hearing or viewing the presentation, please refresh your browser page. Now I'll pass it over to Paul to get us started. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Olivia. Hey, everyone. Great to have you all here this evening to talk about electric vehicles. That's showing up okay now?
Looks great.
All right. So we're just going to cover the basics today. We call it EV 101. What exactly is an EV and what are the basics about it? Again, my name is Paul Bordenkircher. I'm president of the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association. We've been around since 1992, but the history of Las Vegas and electric vehicles actually goes back to the 70s. We had a company here called Lectra Motors that started making electric vehicle conversions back as long ago as 1979. They made about 1,000 vehicles before things changed and their company folded in the mid 80s. But we've got a long history with electric vehicles, so let's jump right into it. What we're going to cover today is just the basics. When we talk about an electric vehicle, what do we mean? Then next, if you're in a situation where you have an electric vehicle, maybe you rented one or something, how exactly do you go about charging it? Then we'll talk about some of the specifics with the connections. It is kind of important depending on which vehicle you are and where you are. We'll talk about exactly how expensive it is to charge an electric vehicle and different ways that you can actually save time, money, and hassle with an electric vehicle. So let's start off by talking about just the basics of what an electric vehicle. We usually say electric vehicle. Some people say electrified vehicles because the drivetrain isn't 100% electric. In this case, we're going to talk about those differences. The first kind is a hybrid. Most people are familiar with a Toyota Prius. The Prius has both a gas engine and an electric motor in it. However, on a normal Prius, there is no plug-in for it. So the gas engine does the job of charging the battery and making a switch between them. In a plug-in hybrid, it is exactly the same as a regular hybrid. However, as you might guess, there is a charge port on it. So that particular vehicle, you can plug it in to charge the battery side. And usually there's a bit more control over whether you're driving electric, driving gas, or some combination of the two. And then finally, of course, when we say EV, most of the time we mean a fully electric vehicle. So these vehicles have no gas engine in them and no gasoline or diesel or any fossil fuel being used in the car to drive it. So these are three examples on the side. Again, I mentioned the Hyundai Kona is a straight hybrid. The Toyota Prius Prime, specifically the Prime, is the one that has the plug on the side, so it's a plug-in hybrid. And then, of course, most people who are interested in this know about Teslas. A Model 3 is an example of an all-electric. Now, how do we go about charging an electric vehicle? There's actually three basic levels of charging. One just involves a simple regular outlet in your home. That's a 120 volt outlet, plugs in like anything else. It can draw anywhere from 8 to 15 amps. Typically, depending on the size of the battery and how much you've driven your car and how far the battery's down, typically can take anywhere between 10 and 30 hours. This is obviously the slowest one of the three. As far as the current draw, it estimates somewhere between a vacuum cleaner, and I've actually heard now it's more like a coffee pot. I was told originally that you could only plug one EV into a wall outlet. I've seen many instances where actually two different EVs were charging on the same 120-volt outlet. Next time level is what we call level two. If you have an electric dryer in your home, if you have an electric stove, it's basically the same type of connection. So we're dealing with 240 volts, anywhere between 30 and as much as 80 amps. So a fully depleted Tesla, for example, could more than likely be charged overnight between 4 to 8 hours. Now, there's a lot of homes, especially in this area of Las Vegas. I live out in the Summerlin area. I had family that lived in Sun City. Having dryers and things in the garage is fairly common. So if you have the outlet already there, there's another little device people make called a splitter. And essentially, you can plug in both your dryer and your EV charger, and it can switch between the two depending on when you're using them. So if you have that outlet in your garage, you're already ready to do level two. Then finally, the ones you see around town in different parking lots in different areas, you see superchargers. Tesla superchargers are the most common. We refer to that as either level three charging or DC fast charging. Out of the three levels, this is the only one that is DC current to DC current. The other two, obviously plugging into the wall, convert AC to DC. These are very powerful. These are the type of thing you will not see in the home because of the level of power and the level of expense to put them in. They operate on 400 volts or more. They usually operate at between 50 and 350 kilowatts, so much, much higher power. Some vehicles can actually charge from 10% battery to 80% battery in 20 minutes or less, depending on the model. So this is very powerful charge. And again, these really you'll only see outside the home. Level one, level two can be seen in the home. As far as different types of connections, we are in an interesting kind of change that we're seeing in the industry as far as which connectors we use. Because you can imagine that you don't just plug these things into the wall. They have a charger or what's called an EVSE, which is electric vehicle service equipment, and that connects the power from the wall into your vehicle. This is still currently the most common one, but we'll get to that in a second. This particular connector that you see here handles level one, level two, and level three charging. The part you see circled in orange is also called the J1772. Don't worry, you don't have to know that. But that is the part that handles level one and level two. So you would see a connector that looks like the top part. If you go to a level three or DC fast charger, you'll see the whole thing with the two large connectors at the bottom as well. Again, these are the most common now, but this is about to change for this port, which is the Tesla charge port, otherwise known as the NACS port. These are available at superchargers. Again, that's DC fast charging. And Tesla also has at places like hotels, shopping malls, and so forth, they will have what they call destination chargers. They look very similar. However, they are running at level two, but the connector looks exactly the same. Now, Tesla chargers and charge ports can handle a lot of power. They can handle well over 100 kilowatts. I believe it now it's up into the 400 and 500 kilowatts. And with the dominance of the Tesla supercharger network nationwide, we have seen that basically all major automotive brands have made a pledge to switch to this type of connector. So like I say, we're going to see a change from that first connector I showed you, the CCS, to the Tesla charge port over the next couple of years. Now, let's talk about what it costs to charge. We see a lot of myths about this. We see a lot of different things about it. And part of having these meetings is to set the record straight. So, for example, here to charge your vehicle here in the Las Vegas, Southern Nevada area, if you charge with level one charging at home, guess what? You're going to pay the same rate that you pay for the rest of your house. The current NV Energy rate is roughly about 17 cents a kilowatt once you throw in all the fees and whatnot. However, they also have something they call a time of use program. This fluctuates a lot. You always need to check with your utility first if this is available at the time. But essentially, they offer a reduced rate for charging at specific times during the day. Right now in Nevada, it happens to be late nights or overnights. So, for example, between the hours of 10 p.m. and say 7 a.m., you may pay something like 9 cents a kilowatt. Here's an interesting thing about that. The way Nevada Energy does that, they credit that rate of power to the entire home, not just to charging the vehicle. So you have to look into it for details. There are some tips and tricks and little things about it that may make it less worth it to you, but it is a possibility of charging even less than the standard residential rate. Now, level two charging, again, at home, you're going to pay the same rate as your residential rates, or if you have the time of use program. When you are out in public, when you go to a shopping mall or a casino or places like that, and they have charging, more often than not, you're going to see this. You're going to see level two charging. And depending on the situation, depending on who owns that charger, there are still places where, in fact, may be free. In fact, I know some of the local hospitals have chargers, and for the first 2 hours you use them, the charging is free. After that point, then some kind of charging structure kicks in. For level three or DC fast charging, you will typically see those in some kind of charger network, and you'll see some common names. ChargePoint is a big one around town. EVgo is another one, not so much anymore. Electrify America is another one that you'll see at the major shopping malls. They typically have their own app. Many of them have a type of subscription plan. So for paying for a few dollars a month for their subscription, you get a reduced rate on the power. Now, these rates vary. I say I average them out to be about 45 cents a kilowatt. So you can see compared to the home rate, it's almost triple. So level three will always be the most expensive charging. However, it is also the quickest. So if you're on the road, you're looking for a level three charger to gas up or fuel up between stops. So there are varying rates to it. I know some Tesla superchargers charge as high as 69 cents a kilowatt during peak hours. So it will vary quite a bit. But if you charge at home, and it's one of the leading things for the reasons people decide to purchase EVs, charging at home is easily the least expensive option. Now, where are you able to charge? It's great if you have them, but do chargers stick out like gas stations? No, not really, because they're not nearly as large and they don't have the same structures as gas stations do. But there are a number of different places that you can charge. Again, home being the number one place that most EV drivers use to charge. Again, shopping is a very common one. Again, I live near downtown Summerlin. The parking garages have at least 6 or 8 chargers in both the north and south parking garages. The casinos have them. Again, I live near Red Rock Casino. They have chargers there. Many of the casinos down on the strip have them. And some of them put them behind valet parking. So be aware of that. Auto dealerships, many of them make their chargers available during their normal working hours. Of course, you can't always get in there. Here, they're closed on Sundays, so you wouldn't be able to get to them. Our local utilities have it. NV Energy on West Sahara has 10 EV charging stations available there. Many of our public libraries here in Clark County have charging stations in the parking lot outside, so you can use those. And then the state of Nevada has what's called the Nevada Electric Highway. This is an initiative put together a few years ago, and the effort is to put level two or level three charging on all the major roadways through Nevada at a minimum distance of 50 miles, or I should say maximum distance of 50 miles apart. So theoretically, you could literally drive just about anywhere in Nevada on the major highways using electric vehicle charging. Now, the next trick is, like I said, they don't stick out like a giant gas station. So how in fact do you find them? Well, there's a few key apps and websites that can be used. Tesla, of course, was the first to put an app into the car. So we've all seen the screens that they have in the vehicles. There is software built in there to say, I want to go from Las Vegas to Salt Lake City. And it will actually go through and program the routes and show you where you will need to make stops and where the chargers are available. Other models like Kia and Hyundai and some others are doing a similar thing with an in-car app rather. PlugShare is a third-party agnostic software that's available on the web. There is an app for that. Personally, it's kind of my favorite because it doesn't care what model or brand you drive. You can plug in the car that you have, and it will show you the stops that work for your vehicle. Again, if you don't have an adapter or CCS, if you have a CCS vehicle, you wouldn't be able to use a Tesla charger without an adapter. But if you do, it can accommodate for that. So it will show you any and all networks and any and all charging stations available. Each of the major charging networks also have their own apps. So ChargePoint, if you use the ChargePoint app, it'll show you all ChargePoint stations. If you have EVgo, it will show you all the EVgo stations in your area or along their route. And again, Electrify America. I mention those because if you are an EV driver and you end up purchasing a vehicle, you will typically have these apps on your phone because the experience to charge your vehicle with, let's say, for example, Electrify America, if you use the EA app to connect to the charger and start your charging session, things tend to go smoother than if you just walk up with a credit card or do something else. So, but these are all possibilities. In Las Vegas, Electrify America is one of the biggest ones. Obviously, Tesla superchargers, EVgo and ChargePoint, less so ChargePoint, more the level 2 chargers at shopping malls. So it varies a little bit. Now, the big question, and one that comes up a lot, usually people aren't used to hearing the words save and electric vehicle in the same sentence. But in fact, these two actually do go together. And we're going to talk about how you can save time, how you will actually save money over the course of time, and some of the hassles that come along with gas or diesel vehicles. So let's start with time. Again, biggest time saver, biggest advantage for electric vehicles, without a doubt, is if you can charge at home. Imagine coming in after you're done with work, you plug in the vehicle, you go to work the next day. How long is that car sitting there not doing anything? So let's say you get home at 5 o'clock and you're leave to work the next morning at 7. How many hours is that? 10 hours more? So that's the amount of time that that car can be spent charging just while you sleep. Next, there's level 2 charging. I think we're all used to doing this with our phones. If you are somewhere and you get a chance to stop or sit somewhere and like, ooh, I could get a little bit of a charge here. I'm going to plug in for half hour while I'm sitting here doing whatever. When you're driving an electric vehicle, you can often think of things that way. So, for example, when I go over to downtown Summerlin to update my AirPods or do something like that and go to the Apple store, I plug in. I charge at the shopping mall. It may be 30 minutes, it may be 2 hours, whatever I happen to be doing, but I will charge when I'm there. Many places in Las Vegas actually have charging at work now. They're either using fleet vehicles for the business, or they're offering it to their employees. So we're seeing it in more places, like we said, shopping malls, casinos, offices, and other places that you might go around. So imagine getting not a full tank, but you get 10 or 20 points of charge while you're sitting there doing what you would already do anyway. Then let's talk save money. There's a few things here. First of all, of course, again, back to charging. Charging at home gives you the lower fuel expense. Level 2 charging may be free or partially free in certain instances, but the last one that we really like to spend time on has to do with maintenance. I really should change the slide so it says cost of ownership, because we have seen that over the course of time, while EVs tend to be a little bit more to purchase, over the course of their life, they save a tremendous amount of money on things like fuel and maintenance. For example, my very first vehicle was a very small EV. It was a Chevy Spark. They made an electric version for a couple of years. I kept meticulous records that first year because I really wanted to see how much money I was going to save. Compared to my wife's car, which, to be fair, was a larger car and didn't get the most fabulous mileage. But I estimated that I saved about $1,200 to $1,500 a year just on fuel. And that was only driving about 8 to 10,000 miles a year, actually more like 8,000. So you can imagine the more I drive, the more I would save. Now imagine again with the expense on the vehicle, a regular gas or diesel vehicle has somewhere in the neighborhood of over 2,000 moving parts in the drivetrain. There are certain models of electric vehicles that have as few parts as 12 moving parts in the drivetrain. So there's a lot fewer things to go wrong. There's a lot fewer things to maintain. The easiest examples are things like oil changes. There are none. Radiator flushes, very rare, if ever, for the cooling system for the battery. And the biggest one actually is brake pads. Now, we all typically put brake pads on every 30 or 40,000 miles, something like that. Now, imagine with an electric vehicle, you have something called regenerative braking. Regenerative braking means that when you let off the accelerator, instead of brake pads grabbing the rotors and generating heat to slow the vehicle down, imagine there's magnets on that rotor. They engage, they slow the vehicle down, and at that moment, the motor goes in reverse and actually starts to put power back into the battery. This is also partly why, if you've ever heard that EVs are better range or have better driving range in town than on the road, this is partly why. EVs actually love stop and go traffic because of the regenerative braking. But the other benefit is the fact that you hardly use your brake pads. When I first started looking for my very first EV, I had somebody I talked to who was a Prius owner, and he said he had just put in his first set of brake pads on the car at 150,000 miles. Now, am I going to say every single person's going to get that kind of range? Of course not. But depending on how you drive and how you do it, that's the kind of longevity you can potentially see by driving an electric vehicle. Now, just to give you an example of that complexity of the engine, the top picture there is a motor out of a BMW X5, pretty standard mid-range gas vehicle. The bottom half of the picture is what the Tesla Model S motor looks like. Now imagine the level of complexity, all the hoses, all the connectors, all the things that are involved in that top motor that you do not see in the bottom motor. That is the dramatic difference on maintenance. And the reason that even though they cost more to go into, an electric vehicle over the course of time will actually save you money. In fact, Forbes magazine, who is not exactly a friend to certain things, environmental and so forth, they did an article in March of 2024 declaring that electric vehicles are in fact less expensive to own than comparable gas or diesel vehicles. So if Forbes has to admit it, I'm going to assume it's pretty true. Now let's talk hassle. Again, charging at home hits the top of the list. You can be charging when you're at work. You can be charging when you're at home if you have those options. Imagine your vehicle sits for 8 hours a day while you're at work. It sits for 12 to 15 hours at night before you go to work the next day. That can all happen in time that you're not using. I hear people say all the time, well, I can go to the gas station to charge, fill up my car in 10 minutes. And my question back is, you take 10 minutes? I take 10 seconds. I get home, plug my car in, and walk in. And that's the end of it. When I come back, I unplug the car, hang it up, and I'm ready to go. So, in fact, I've estimated I've saved between 5 and 8 hours a year not going to a gas station. So, that's also part of the hassle with it. We had one, the very last one here was a really interesting one from one of our members of our EV group. His wife was just so about the electric vehicle. She was curious, interested, but not completely sold on it. So he had her drive the car around for a few weeks. And after about a month, he came back to her and said, so what do you think? And her eyes got really big. And she said, I love the fact that I never have to stop at a sketchy gas station at night. A safety thing I would have never even thought of. But that's another example of something that you don't have to deal with. Now, of course, if you're on the road, you're going to charge up somewhere. And we're seeing most of the charging stations are in well-lit areas. So we're not seeing that with charging stations so much on the road. But at least for her, for every day driving around town, she was very happy with that as a possibility. So with that, that's covering the very high level basics of it. Olivia, I hope we have a whole bunch of questions.
Thank you so much, Paul, again for presenting on EV 101 and going in depth into this topic. For everyone watching, we do these presentations year round. So we did them in person at libraries, we do them virtually, and of course we could answer questions right now as well. So let me pull up the questions. First question, are there any recent or upcoming initiatives the Nevada electric vehicle is particularly excited about?
Well, I don't think the right word is excited, but everyone should know the news, and I did not cover that in this today. But there have been incentives, tax incentives to purchase either new or used electric vehicles. And we do know, of course, if you've watched the news at all, the end of this month on September 30th, those incentives are going away. So we are in a very interesting time to see what the situation will look like after September 30th. We think that the enthusiasm is going to continue to grow. In fact, because of the incentives closing, we've seen a big jump in the short term on the sales of electric vehicles pretty much nationwide. So people who are thinking about it, sitting on the fence about it, are basically committing and going ahead with it. So I think we're going to see a lot more adoption, even because the incentives went away, because people are going to see them, like them, and they're going to become permanent EV drivers. We see very few people. There are a few, but we see very few people that ever go back to gas vehicles if they can help it. We find often hybrids end up being like a transition. Well, let me try electric a little bit. They use a hybrid vehicle and they decide, I really like that electric side. And the next vehicle becomes an all electric. So excited about what's coming, a little trepidatious about what it might mean in the short term. But we believe in the long term, this incentive for people are trying to get the incentive before it goes away. I think it's going to drive greater growth in electric vehicle sales, and it's going to clean our air. That's the best thing about it.
Thank you so much, Paul. Next question. Are there any specific permits or regulations we should be aware of when installing a home EV charger in Southern Nevada?
Well, first and foremost, if you do a level one charger, nothing is needed. It's a standard 120-volt outlet. There's nothing special about the wiring and so forth. Just plugs into a regular was it NEMA 515 if you're an electrician, normal outlet, and it draws, like I said, draws somewhere between a coffee pot and a vacuum cleaner. So there's literally nothing to that. Now, if you do decide that you want to get a level two charger, I will always recommend that you have an electrician involved. Double check your stuff. Even if you have the plug in your garage already and you're ready to go. My electrician actually came and put a 240-volt outlet into my garage because we didn't have one. And he made a point to mention that the connector uh, that actually the charger will plug into is susceptible to melting if you don't have the right equipment. So if you already have the connector, an electrician may come in and put in an upgraded connector into it. Otherwise, if you have to run it from scratch, there are calculations that need to be made, load calculations and so forth, and obviously where you want the plug to be compared to where your main circuit breaker for the house is. So I say always check with an bonded, licensed, insured electrician to check those outlets and see if that's something that you want to do.
Great, thank you, Paul. And a follow-up to that question is, are there any local companies or certified installers the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association recommends for home charging installations?
We don't have anybody specifically that we endorse. We have people that we have worked with in the past, and we've heard very good things about. Uh, there's a Robco Electric that's down in the southern part of the valley. Crystal and their gang has been very supportive of what we're doing with electric vehicles. They do a lot with electric vehicle setups and so forth. So they're the one company I can think of off the top of my head. The electrician that put mine in, I wanted to give him a blatant plug. Now here's my chance. BRB Electric. I believe he's based in Henderson. You just have to look him up that way. BRB Electric. Did a terrific job on mine. It was probably in a matter of about 2 hours or so. Oh, and one more thing about the charger, depending on your situation, you may also want to look into permits. You want to make sure that this thing is done right. If obviously, if you're doing something like renting, you make absolutely sure that this thing is up to code before you go in. We want to make sure everything is safe.
Thank you, Paul. Just a few more questions. What are the benefits of joining the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association membership?
Well, we have a lot of different things that we do as part of the club. I actually skip that part of the presentation. I try not to be too sales pitchy on these things, but we do spend a lot of time discussing what the current state here is in Nevada. We spend a lot of time, of course, with great people like Olivia and Clark County DES and the Southern Nevada Clean Cities Coalition to work together to make this a better city. it's all about the initiatives to have better sustainability, healthier cities, and so forth. And we're all a part of it. And like any other group, we have a lot of people that love to sit around and talk shop about our vehicles and what makes them great and what makes them different. So we have all of that involved. And we're making a greater effort to reach out to other communities outside of our normal bubble to get people involved and to see what these benefits are. And we're hoping to just make this a cleaner and safer and better city for everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Just two more questions in the chat. What's the best way to approach property managers or HOA boards about installing EV chargers in apartment complexes or communities?
That has been probably one of our top challenges, even in Clark County. And Clark County is actually a pretty hip area as far as electric vehicles go. If you start to know the brands and models and so forth, you'll see that there are a lot of them around town. But our biggest adoption problem is, in fact, still multi-unit dwellings, apartments, condos, complexes. So it's been a challenge for us as well to bring them the appropriate use case that makes sense for them. And we've tried very hard to show them that Vegas is a city that's adopted electric vehicles. We have a pretty high percentage in this town. And your future tenants at your places are going to be asking for this. This is your competitive advantage for things. And oh, did we mention that if you set it up right, this can actually be a revenue stream for your property? There's different types of services where literally it's just like going to the shopping mall. You plug in, you put your charge card in, and you pay a certain amount. Properties, multi-unit dwellings can do the very same thing. So it's making them understand that it's something that's going to bring in business. It's going to bring in tenants to their place. It's going to be a moving advantage for a number of people. And also the fact that this can become a revenue stream for that property or that business. So that's still a challenge that we have today. And obviously retrofitting it into a place that's already been built, it's more difficult. It's more work in certain ways. If the building's under construction, obviously it can be just added to the plan. So it will continue to be a challenge for us. And I think that's true everywhere. But we hope to have them see those advantages and see that this is something that, in fact, their tenants want.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. And then last question for you is how can I plan road trips to nearby states in my EV?
Again, you'll have probably two main ways. Number one, depending on the vehicle you have, many of them now have built-in software. So you can say, tapping it on the dash and say, I'm going from Las Vegas to Salt Lake or to Denver, Colorado. And it will pick a route based on your car's capabilities, how big the battery is, what your range is, and so forth, and decide if you take this route, these are where your stops are going to be. And I know the Tesla software does it. I believe PlugShare does this as well. It will tell you when you get to this stop, we expect your battery to be at 18%. And you're going to sit there and charge. We expect that to take 32 minutes and your battery will be at 80%. When you go to the next stop, it'll give you the same thing and it'll move it along the way. So it can either be in car, such as Tesla was the first to do it, but my Kia has it now as well. And I believe other brands are doing it. That's the first part. If you have a vehicle that does not have that built in, that's where there's actually two pieces of software. One is called PlugShare. Again, it's an app and a website. And there's another one called a Better Route Planner. Some people like it better, just depends. Basically, they do the same functions. They have slightly different crowdsourced as far as where the chargers are and so forth. So either one of those two would let you be able to plan a trip and be fairly confident that you shouldn't have any issues along the way.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul, for all the questions and for the great presentation. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We really appreciate your time. The session has been incredibly helpful for everyone looking to learn more about EVs and make that switch. Before we go, I just wanted to share a few upcoming events that we have, especially for National Drive Electric Month, like I said in the beginning, from September 12th to October 12th, and we're celebrating all month long. Please join us this Saturday, September 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Silverado Ranch Community Center. Here we'll have EV ride and drives, EVs on display. You could come talk to the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association and talk to everyday drivers and ask your questions as well, and get behind the wheel. It's a very exciting and fun event. There'll be some food vendors on site as well, and a lot of sustainability and local resources for you to learn more about EVs. And then our last event for National Drive Electric Month is our Glow Ride event happening the following Saturday, on Saturday, October 4th from 5 to 7:30. This is located at the center, downtown Las Vegas. You could join us, the Nevada Electric Vehicle Association, and RTC Bike Share for a fun glowing ride downtown. We'll have glow sticks and different decorations. It'll be a lot of fun. It's also RTC's birthday, so we'll have cupcakes to celebrate as well. So you could come learn about the different community booths that will be there. You could come to check out the electric vehicles. And you could also join us on a bike ride. We'll have some bikes for to borrow, or you could bring your own bike, scooter. You could walk, roller skate, rollerblade, anything that is safe to do a community bike or a community ride with. So we're encouraging RSVPs, but you don't have to. You can just show up to any of these free events, and you don't have to stay the whole time. You could just pop in and say hello. We'd love to see you. And then we also have our webinar series, just a few months left. We've been going strong in 2025, one webinar a month dedicated to this series. And then we also have our pop-up webinars, such as EV 101. You can join us in October for climate advocacy. November, we'll cover the importance of recycling for America Recycles Day. And then in December, we're going to do a reflection of our sustainability achievements throughout the year. You could find all this information on allinclarkcounty.com/events, or follow us on social media to stay updated on latest programs, events, and tools available to our community. But this concludes today's webinar. Thank you again for being with us today, and have a great National Drive Electric Month.